Well, it's good to be here tonight. I think it's a bit surreal to me thinking about what the Lord is doing, just seeing what each face in this room represents and just the faithfulness that God is showing us. This is a picture from a year ago, and just thinking about where we were then and where the Lord's leading us now and into the future. It is good. It is good to be here. So we're going to be talking as a church about what does it mean to function as the community that God designed and intended for us. And when I think about community and I think about what God is doing through our church, I always think about what it was like when I first got married. When I married my wife, Ligaya, I thought I married her, married the whole Filipino family, and they're here with us tonight. It's a new way of life, which was good. And I tasted new foods and learned a new language and what hospitality means. And at times, if I'm honest, I think there was moments where it was a bit different from what I grew up in Minnesota. We joke that I grew up as a Viking, and it wasn't Filipino, and it was just different. The way that we understood hospitality, the way that we ate different foods. And I think what's interesting is when I think about community and I think about what it was like being a part of a Filipino family, being from Minnesota, even in my own family, I could separate myself, not because I didn't want to feel connected and not because I wasn't Filipino. It's because I defined family and I defined community differently. The values that I had were expressed different. And I think when we have differing values, if we're not aware of how those differences can pull us apart, we can start to drift. And I saw this drift at my previous church. This is a picture of me with the Indian Fellowship. And you might not see me there. It's a little blurry. But there I am. In the Mass, and we were doing a Christmas outreach. And I remember at our church, we were talking about being a multi-ethnic community and how there were challenges in the different ethnicities forming together as one church. And my pastor would say, man, it just feels like people are just like clumping together based on their ethnic background. So there's the Indians that were clumping together, and then there's the Anglo-Americans. And the staff was talking about this, and there's a lot of different responses to how do we come together and form unity when there were some obvious differences. And some responded saying, well, they just need to adapt to us. And when I think about that, that's just delaying the inevitable, that when you're not working towards a common goal, the differences can just separate us. So we're just going to wait. They're going to adapt to us. Or, on the outside, everyone just seemed happy, and which is really a denial of what was going on. And as I talked to some of my friends that were ethnic leaders, I started to hear how they weren't happy, and there was some challenges to feeling connected. And so as through this experience of being in the church and wanting to form community, and there's obvious ethnic differences, the question came up, which is who takes the first step? Because it's difficult to build relational unity if the different groups don't step towards each other and they stay separate. And when I think about this as it relates to our church, we must consider our posture towards each other and understanding how can we go beyond just coming into a room, being at a retreat, being at church on Sunday, to building relationships, meaningful relationships across the ethnic divide. Because I think forming multi-ethnic community is challenging. And I think it's easier to do nothing. I think it's easier to criticize what you don't understand, or just to assume it's just going to go its way. And I think the solution is to move into a new perspective, which I love this artistic rendering and how you're seeing that from different perspectives, it seems like kind of a mess. And then when you get to the one perspective, you see how it all comes together and forms this beautiful image. But to move into a new perspective, it takes effort to see the vision for community or the vision for this artist rendering as the artist intended. And when you do, you see this beautiful result. And you can appreciate the talent, the thought, the skill, which ultimately this reflects the creator of this artistic design. And when I think about that for community, that's what's so beautiful about the church, is community can reflect the beauty of our creator, who's an artist forming something new at Anthem Church, at Nations Church, by uniting different people together in Jesus so that the world encounters the beauty of our God. And so really the question I have for us this evening is, how do we form community at Anthem Church or Nations Church so that the world encounters God, so that the world encounters the beauty of our Creator? I think we need to see the church from God's perspective, which takes effort, and I think to understand His design for our identity as a church really requires kind of three views. And that's what I want to start with, is just the different views that we need to have as we think about what it means to form community. Let's start with what the scriptures say. And I think the first thing to see is that church as family in the Bible is the number one most common metaphor. And I think about that because it talks about God as Father, Christ as brother, we're brothers and sisters. And like a family, you don't choose who's your family. And I think the people of the church may not be who you would have chosen to build relationship with, but like a family, God is forming something new. And so we're partnering with Him as we each contribute to the needs of each other to grow and to learn from each other, which requires all of us, like a family. And that doesn't take away from the significance of our biological family. The point is that there's something special that happens at the church when we see it, not just as an event, not just something that we get from, but a people, a family where we bond together with that identity that we each contribute together. Now, like a family, it's not about what my heart wants to get from others. It's found in our heart for each other, which is shaped by Jesus. He's like our big brother. He's the firstborn who's leading us as a church, and He's reshaping our way of life so that we represent His life and His mission. It's both. And it's so that the world hears the good news of Jesus and encounters the good life in Jesus. That's what we have as the family that's defined by Him. And that means that there's a purpose beyond ourselves. And for us, the purpose of our family is to demonstrate the life and mission of Jesus so that just as Jesus lived to glorify God by His love of God, church, and neighbor, then we too are to live our lives to glorify God by our love of God and our neighbor, which was so important to Jesus, and it was so important to Him that He prayed for us even before the church existed. This is in John 17, 20 to 21. It says, my prayer, this is Jesus, my prayer is not for them alone. He's talking about the disciples that followed Him. He says, I pray also for those who will believe. That's us. That all of them may be what? One. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. But why? The last part is so important. May they also be in us so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The church is to be so united in God's love that the world would believe in the reality of God. And so God is forming us into His community to become like the presence of Jesus so the world encounters God in us. And I know that's happening because I've served in the city of Bellevue and the Bellevue Diversity Advisory Network. And when we had a representative from the city come, he was very surprised at the different ethnicities that were coming together that would normally form mono-ethnic churches, Chinese churches, Korean churches. And he saw everyone together and it didn't make sense from his background. And I thought, what a beautiful expression of the power of the gospel and an answer to Jesus' prayer. And so God is working. And that's why we need to be committed as a church to loving God, loving the church, loving our neighbors, so that we follow in the footsteps of Jesus and fulfill his purpose for our church. Now, I'm going to be walking us through the book, Forming Community. And so if you want to follow along, you can. I wrote it out because not everyone can be here, and I want them to have the same awareness of what we're talking about. So this is just kind of walking through chapter 1, an introduction. But you'll kind of page through there, and you'll see me following this as a general outline for tonight. And so I'm going to reference pages, and you can look at that. And the question I have here is on the top of page 10, and this is just for a reflection. We'll have time to discuss in a little bit, but just think about these questions. How does the metaphor of family reshape how you think of the church's identity? This is on page 10. What is your vision for the church, and how does that vision for the church, what you want to see, align with God's vision for us? And then thinking about how we're forming something new, we all come with different expectations, different values. Are there things that would be important for you that we talk about? Because every person that joins contributes, and we want to get on the same page. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is really look at how can we move in the same direction, a united direction, where we're working together in the different expressions of personalities and ethnic backgrounds and experiences, but we're forming something together, united as one, to become the expression of Jesus so that the world encounters God.